They pretend that foods are not therapeutic. Who among us says that if you don't eat food, you're going to die? Everyone. The reality is food is therapeutic. It at least keeps you alive. It does much more than that. It can actually eliminate disease or reduce the risk of disease or expand your life. It's enormously therapeutic. And yet we have this artificial distinction in the law that says, no, you may not call a food a drug, because if you say a food treats, mitigates, prevents disease, it's automatically prohibited from being sold as a food and now becomes a drug. I mean, this is insane, but this is the law.
Decentralized, don't compromise, be unauthorized, decentralized, decentralized, got to realize, don't decarbonize, decentralized, decentralized.
Welcome to today's episode of Decentralized TV. And today it's all about health freedom. And our guest today is attorney Jonathan Emord, who will be joining us here in just a second. But first, Todd Pittner, my co-host, joins us. Welcome, Todd. Are you ready for the intellect of today's guest?
Never. It all goes right over my head, but somebody has to carry the water. So I'm here to be the Ed McMahon.
Well, as I say, if you're in debate club and you're in a debate competition, you find out the other guy is Jonathan Emord, you should just forfeit right there. It's like, I'm out of here. This is done. He's that good.
True.
Yeah. Well,
True.
let's bring him in. Welcome, Jonathan Emord, sir. It's a great honor to have you on the show today. And I want to mention your position with the Alliance for Natural Health, anh-usa.org. So welcome.
Great to be with you guys.
Hey, Jonathan, I'd like to provide our viewers with some context. You are now, thank you, a monthly recurring guest on Decentralized TV. And it's important to note that your health freedom updates are not about health tips, but the legal plumbing underneath whether Americans are allowed to hear truthful, non-misleading health information before they are sick, bankrupt, and holding a prescription bag. So, Jonathan, since your last DTV appearance, what is the single biggest legal development in the health freedom fight that our audience needs to understand?
Well, I think what we need to understand is that the changes necessary to bring about an end to chronic disease in America, which is what the administration is saying needs to be done, are simply not happening fast enough or in as extensive a nature as we need. I don't believe that is a result of an absence of willingness on the part of the HHS secretary, but I do believe that it is a result of a stultified, ancient, and very protective to industry institution in the Food and Drug Administration and the CDC that is blocking essential reforms and has for the last 100 years, really. What we have is we're out of sync with modernity, basically. The law is standing in the way of enabling us to achieve the greatest advancements in health that the world has ever seen. And that is because the key information we need at the point of sale, in the grocery store, online, is deprived of us. And this is something Mike knows extremely well. I mean, the reality is, if you're a consumer, you have to guess what products do, and you have to base your purchasing, if you're a serious person, on what you suspect it does, and based on internet searches and so forth. It's very difficult to get information because the FDA prohibits, at the point of sale, every nutrient disease relationship claim to protect the drug industry from any form of competition. We've got this old, archaic protectionist system that has been with us since the 1930s, and it is killing us literally in the area of health because we don't have access to information. We don't have access to substances that could help us. and we don't have freedom as the founding fathers intended it, in areas that really affect the most significant aspects of our lives. So it's not really a health freedom movement, it's a freedom movement.
Mm.
It's
Yes.
really about whether we have the freedom necessary to live to the fullest.
So, Jonathan, you've hit upon the key issue that you and I both have been actively working to try to reform this dynamic for decades. And right now, President Trump, but not just him, every president before him seems to focus on how do we lower the costs of treating the disease. So when they say, oh, we have to lower healthcare costs, nobody asks, well, why are healthcare costs so high? Why are the American people so diseased with type 2 diabetes and turbo cancers and Alzheimer's and so on? What's that all about? And also, is there a treatment alternative that could cost pennies on the dollar, that could be safer, that could be done at home at far less risk, that would overall further quality of life, longevity, and productivity of the American people at almost no additional cost? Why isn't that ever part of the conversation?
Because no one seems to be willing to attack the source of the problem. So we have a willingness to discuss about tinkering on the edges. We want drugs to be available faster. We want to have the American people get access to cheaper drugs. These things are nice, sort of, but they aren't addressing what's going to change our longevity. In fact, a lot of the drugs that we're talking about are killing us. So it's an institutional problem. Why is it that the government of the United States is solely given the power, a political institution, to determine when a drug is safe and efficacious? In every other area of invention, virtually, the government has no role to play in coming up with the solution to vexing problems. We have innovation right and left in all sorts of areas of energy and productivity of one kind or another. Government is always creeping in, trying to interfere with those things, but nowhere except maybe in the nuclear power industry do we have such a heavy overlay of federal control as we do in the drug industry. If you want to get a new drug introduced, and that means anything that treats, mitigates, prevents disease, you have got to spend roughly upwards of $1 billion to get through all the hoops that are established, the anti-competitive hoops that are established by the drug industry and enforced under federal law. So is it any wonder then that when you find an inexpensive means to treat a disease or to increase longevity, you end up having nowhere to go because you can't say it's a drug, you can't say it treats the disease, you can't say it prevents you from getting a disease unless you spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to try to get a claim, and the government will often refuse to allow the claim. And you have to go to the same institution, FDA, that protects the drug industry from competitive threats. And then if you want to get it to be a drug, you got to have somewhere around $1 billion. And then even then, the government plays favorites with which drug company it grants drug approval for. So it's a horrible system. It doesn't have to be that way. You could privatize the whole drug approval process. You'd have a statutory system that tells what elements have to be established in order for something to be deemed safe and efficacious. And then you could farm it out by license to all sorts of institutions to do the research and to actually test the substances in individuals who are in clinical trials. You could have a million of these across the United States doing it. And upon their ascertaining the evidence that these things actually work or actually have a role to play in mitigating disease, you could release that information to the public and let the consumer decide what they want to do.
Yes.
And instead, you've got a centralized system with the FDA, one monopoly, deciding for everybody whether or not these political appointees at the agency think something is worthy of being called a drug and allowed to be used in treatment. And the same thing is with regard to this artificial distinction between foods and drugs. Look, everything you eat is a drug. Everything you eat is going to either improve your health or diminish your health. And there are sometimes obviously instances in which something that you eat is going to do both, and that there are actual elements and things that are harmful to you that if extracted from a food could actually be health enhancing. And on and on and on. We have massive amount of scientific research on this, but it's all locked up in academia, and it's not available at the point of sale in the grocery stores and online because the government censors it. So what would happen? Let's imagine what would happen if you opened up all the markets to this information, and if you allowed, for example, 1,000, 10,000, 50,000 institutions across the country that met statutory criteria for testing to actually test a substance that is proposed to be a drug and to determine whether it actually is safe and efficacious, and to do it in a blinded manner so there's no undue influence. Well, you'd have a lot more drugs, quote unquote, for a lot less money with a lot greater indications for how to use it. And you'd also have in the food market a whole bunch of information that could lead consumers to go away from substances that are not health enhancing towards substances that are. And the overall effect would be to diminish age-related disease, diminish chronic disease, extend longevity. And rather than being something like 70th or 80th in the world in longevity, we would be closer to number one.
Well, absolutely. What you said makes perfect sense, but I just want to point this out, and then Todd has a question. But it seems to me that for the FDA to maintain this position that you just described as the regulator, they have to pretend that molecules in pharmaceuticals do things in human physiology, but molecules in food and supplements do not do things. And that is a total violation of reality, the laws of chemistry, physiology, neurology, you name it. But that is what they are pretending. It's like the emperor wears no clothes, you know?
Yeah, it's very much so. And it's even worse because they pretend that foods are not therapeutic.
Yeah.
I mean, how is that? I mean, who among us says that if you don't eat food, you're going to die? Everyone. The reality is food is therapeutic. It at least keeps you alive. Well, of course, it keeps you alive, but also it does much more than that. It can actually eliminate disease or reduce the risk of disease or expand your life. It's enormously therapeutic. And yet we have this artificial distinction in the law that says, no, you may not call a food a drug, because if you say a food treats, mitigates, prevents disease, it's automatically prohibited from being sold as a food and now becomes a drug. When you say prune juice is helpful in treating chronic constipation, you've just taken that prune juice and made it an illicit drug like heroin, and you've made it possible for law enforcement to seize every bottle of prune juice and to prosecute those who make it as illicit drug manufacturers and throw them in jail.
True.
With criminal terms. I mean, this is insane, but this is the law.
Well, this has happened. The FTC, I remember, also went after a tart cherry extract manufacturer that was citing government published studies talking about how tart cherries reverse gout, which is something that's widely known among those of us in the food and nutrition business. We know that. You have gout, eat cherries, Yeah,
I represented those people, and it was outrageous. I remember discussing with the FDA agents who were responsible for this. I said, look, my client is a cherry tree farmer. He's got a farm with cherry trees on it. You're saying because he's giving out a university study that says that these tart cherries can reduce gout, symptoms of gout, that he's selling a drug, and you're saying that he can't sell cherries anymore because the cherries are drugs. What are you going to do to enforce that? You're going to chop down all his cherry trees? You're going to go and impound his farm or take his farm away? You're going to lock him up because here he is, a cherry farmer his whole life, and they've had this farm in their family for centuries. You're going to throw him in jail over this? And I said, how are you going to enforce this? What are you going to do to this guy? And they said, well, we're going to take him to court. And I said, over what? For giving away a university publication that says cherries, tart cherries, can reduce the incidence of gout. Do you have proof that it's false? Well, we don't have to. He's just making a therapeutic claim. Well, he's not making any claim at all. He's just giving out the publication and saying, hey, look, I sell tart cherries. Here's a study that was published by the university on tart cherries. He's not saying that it's actually going to cause a cure for anything. He's just saying, hey, why don't you read this study about tart cherries? Make up your own mind. I mean, are you saying that people have to avoid reading any science about tart cherries if they're going to eat cherries? Is that what you're saying?
You have to eat cherries with a blindfold on, apparently.
Yeah. You know, I mean, that a person could get this information online, or they could go to a library, or they could be given it by a friend. All that you're saying is okay. But if they happen to be given that information by a store clerk or by the guy at the farm, you're saying now that's a crime. Jeez. How is that? It's the same information. Why is it a crime in the context of the cherry farm and not in the context of the university? You know, by the way, while you're at the university, you might be able to eat cherries in the university cafeteria. I mean, you know, the point, it's so ridiculous. And you know, it was because of the embarrassment of that, I think, and largely also because of the number of cases that I'd won against the FDA, that they discontinued beating up the guy. He agreed not to use put, you know, out to people who purchased his cherries, the study, but we never did agree that the study itself could not be given out, nor did we agree that, you know, other people who were in the supply chain couldn't give people the study. So it was really a non-event in the end, because everybody discovered it was all publicized massively because of the FDA getting involved. And people were reading, who never would have known, by the way, all over the country were reading the story about FDA going after a cherry farmer because a university published a study about tart cherries reducing gout. And gee, did the FDA actually cause the massive greater publication? Yes, they did. And did that greater publication cause a lot more people with gout to start eating tart cherries? Probably.
Yeah. Total backfire. Yeah. Todd, I mean, you and I, we interview so many guests who expose the ridiculousness of government regulators, but what Jonathan just described there is really among the craziest that we ever seen.
Well, it's nuts. I mean, basically, my assessment from just listening to that 5 minutes was that if these same bureaucrats would have been around in biblical times, I think manna from heaven would have required a warning label. Would you agree, Jonathan?
Yeah, I mean, imagine, you know, you've got an orange grove, and you have a bunch of people there that come in once a year. You allow the community to come in and pick oranges, and you're standing there with a microphone inviting everybody in and saying, hey guys, you know, take a little extra because it's cold and flu season, and you know, vitamin C is good for you and might help you fight those diseases. And then you have an FDA agent bag you and throw you in jail because you dared say something that's so commonly understood. I mean, come on. We have got to recognize that these old distinctions that have been enforced by law designed to protect the drug industry from competition need to be broken down so that people can understand. I mean, all of us want people, except for the drug industry, all of us want people to be able to take less harmful means, natural means that are less harmful, to ward off or fight disease than consume synthetic drugs. The system now complements you with huge above market rates of return and government protection for your markets if you'll make a synthetic substance that can be patented, that is a synthetic version of a natural substance, that in almost every instance, by synthesizing that natural substance, becomes far more potent than the natural substance and carries with it adverse effects that were unknown to the natural substance. Right. And forms a chemical that your body has never before in the history of mankind experienced in the body. And that means that the consequences are numerous. Not only that, the government doesn't test any new drug for safety or efficacy. It does no testing at all. It leaves that entirely to the drug company sponsor, a massive conflict of interest. So what you get, are these recalls or these situations where the government comes out and approves the drug as safe and efficacious, puts out to all the doctors in the entire United States the information about the safety and the value of this, a breakthrough drug they'll put out, and it'll be used by all these doctors. And then 15 years down the road, if not sooner, you suddenly start seeing all these weird things: increased cancer, heart disease, diabetes. Is it any wonder if we bombard our bodies with artificial, synthetically made substances as the ultimate treatment for a whole host of diseases, that putting in these things that our body has never seen before, that the world has never known as a chemical agent before in your body, is not going to have untoward side effects? I mean, obviously it will.
Clearly.
Wow.
Go ahead, Todd.
It's just amazing how dangerous nutrition facts become when they threaten a pharmaceutical revenue stream, right? Isn't that where we are today? I mean,
yeah. I mean, the K Street law firms, for the better part of 60 years, have they represent all sorts of big companies, and they're there in Washington working on getting the agencies that regulate to increase their regulation in ways that will protect their clients, and by blocking market entry, making it more difficult to get into either the communications business or the drug industry or whatever industry it is, oil and gas, whatever, to try to protect the industry incumbents from competition. That has been the legal game. Pay the most expensive lawyers and the most sophisticated legal minds have been involved with for decades and decades. This is how Washington works. You want to see how Washington works? Every day, armies of lobbyists go into the agencies, 250 different agencies. You don't have to go to Congress. They do also, but you don't have to go to Congress because all the power is in the agencies. The agencies make 3/4 of all the law. It's not those we elect. It's the unelected heads of the agencies. So you go, and they're dictators. You go in there with an army of lobbyists. You have a proposed regulation. You convince them to adopt the regulation for some bogus public interest that you've created. There's no such thing as a public interest. There's only a private interest. The idea that there's an interest of the public, you define it. Does everyone agree on anything? No. There's no such thing as a public interest. There's a private interest. It's their interest. But you create an argument for a public interest. You say, there is a public interest in free over-the-air television. Therefore, we have to ensure that that ABC, NBC, CBS have access to every home in America. And if a cable company effectively replaces ABC, NBC, and CBS over the air, you have to force the cable company to allow those stations to have the top tier of available cable channels so that everyone has access to that free over-the-air television. This kind of heavy-handed anti-competitive protectionism is the order of the day. Retarding progress so as to avoid competition is how Washington works. And if you want to maximize the profit of a company, and therefore the amount of money that company gives to political candidates that are defending their interests, then you play this game.
Jonathan, you have eloquently explained how corrupt the system is. And my question to you is about by what mechanism could this ever be truly reformed? Because as you pointed out, the financial incentives to keep the current system going are extraordinary. And the little guy, the average American, has no power, not even the power of elections, because these tyrants in the FDA or the CDC or whoever, they are unelected bureaucrats. And they have created, as you've said in your books, they've created fiefdoms of tyranny. Can this ever change, barring the collapse of the republic? How? And I think we've seen evidence that every effort to try to change it from within has failed that we've seen. And the FDA has been around since, 1906, so over a century of corruption and suppression of natural health. How does this ever change, if it does?
Well, it does. There are many mechanisms by which it can change, but ultimately it's going to be up to the courts. It's going to be up to the Supreme Court. We've seen the Supreme Court in the Loper-Bright case commit what really is a revolution against deference to administrative law, deference to the agencies which had been under the Chevron doctrine, the order of the day since the 1980s. Actually, that was when it was recognized by the court. It actually has been going on since the 1930s, where agency determinations of what the law means were given broad deference by the courts, as well as agency allowance to engage in legislative, executive, and judicial power. The very things that the founding fathers did not want delegated out of the three branches of government. The powers that define those three branches were actually given out by and large by Congress to over 250 different federal agencies, making them the most powerful lawmakers, law enforcers, and law adjudicators in the United States, completely eviscerating the Congress and the federal courts and the executive branch in it proper. So Loper-Bright starts the movement back in the right direction. It says, no, you may not, in instances of ambiguity in a statute, defer to the agency's interpretation. The courts are to decide what the law means. It is quintessentially the role of the court to decide what the law means. This is going back to Marbury versus Madison. It's restoring the nature of the power of the judiciary to determine what the law means and not allow unelected, unaccountable bureaucrats who are self-interested to construe law to mean what they want it to mean and have the courts defer. So that's a big step. Now, ultimately, we have to get rid of the administrative state. We have to return all the power that was not supposed to be delegated. There's a thing called the non-delegation doctrine that the founding fathers and even John Locke before them believed in, Montesquieu believed in. Philosophically, it holds together a republic. If you, under our basic principles in the second paragraph of the Declaration of Independence, governments are instituted among men to protect the rights of the governed, but just governments derive their power from the consent of the governed. So if you have those who you elect, that is, those who you consent to be your representatives in Congress, responsible for all laws, then those laws are truly representative. When instead Congress delegates away the power to make law to the unelected in the bureaucracy, you destroy a Republican form of government. You replace it with a bureaucratic oligarchy. And that's what we have today. So restoring it requires ultimately a restoration of the non-delegation doctrine by the courts, and ultimately a realization that all of these powers must be put back into the hands of those who are elected, who are constitutionally bound to behave in manners that are consistent with their powers under their respective articles in the Constitution. Is this possible? Yes. Will it happen? Most likely, because bureaucratic government is an absolute disaster. It's a failure. And what happens is, through all of these socialistic promises that have been made, which have never been fulfilled, the public becomes increasingly disappointed. When whole systems of government collapse because of their inability to function, because of the inadequate or politically driven allocation of resources, because of ever expanding costs associated with the inflation that comes from anti-competitive regulation, you find that people can no longer afford virtually anything that is of great need to them. Medical care. You have the impact on energy and so on. The antidote is competition. The antidote is freedom of choice. And the antidote is the end of bureaucratic government. the restoration of free enterprise.
Mhm.
And this is evolutionary. So it's a question of whether do we have to go to the point of actually having, you know, a medical system collapse, or a, you know, be void of one consumer good or another that is essential? Or does the marketplace basically enforce its will such that either the regulator is neutered, or the courts come along and ultimately club it and it's done? You've got Donald Trump pushing out of existence the Department of Education as best he can. It's still there, but you have him moving to do that. And if you get enough popular will, you can do this legislatively. What we have is this resurgence of socialism in America, which is largely driven by ignorance. The people for whom socialism most appeals are those who are ignorant of their history, ignorant of the story of freedom from the origins of man to the present, and ignorant of the value of freedom. They take it for granted, and they don't understand that centralization of power, which is indispensable to Marxism, is the very antithesis of individual liberty and means that all subjects are enslaved. And slavery is no way to live. And anyone who's experienced slavery can tell you that, whether they've experienced it under Marxism or have experienced it under the hand of someone who's taken away their liberty and thrown them into a basement. The point is the same. And once the youth of this country come to embrace that, they will be themselves liberated, such that they will be able to be soldiers in a movement to restore freedom for everybody, instead of lackeys following behind some idiot like Mamdani, who promises the world but can never deliver it, and who says that socialism, the destruction of free enterprise, is the greatest liberator, when in fact it's the greatest means to enslave everyone.
Well,
Hey,
Todd,
Jonathan.
no, Todd, real quick. I don't know why, but our guest today doesn't seem to like the idea of government-controlled grocery prices in New York City for some reason. I don't know. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm starting to sense that Grandma's chicken soup would never survive peer review or the bureaucracy either.
Yeah, that's right.
Hey, with the Loper Bright decision, did the Supreme Court just take away the bureaucracy's "because we said so" stamp? Is that what happened there?
Yeah. Yeah, in a very, very plain sense, yes. The Loper Bright said that in instances where a statute is ambiguous or does not speak at all to a subject, Chevron, which Loper Bright overruled. It's the Chevron doctrine, the decision of the Supreme Court in Chevron in the 1980s, said that in instances where a statute is silent, or in instances where a statute is ambiguous, a agency of the government can interpret the statute to mean whatever it thinks is reasonable, and the courts are obliged to defer. Only in instances where a statute is unambiguous must a agency follow the unambiguous law. What Loper Bright said was, no, there is no constitutional foundation to have the powers that were expressly delegated to the agencies, or to the departments of the government, delegated away to agencies. Instead, where a statute is silent or where it's ambiguous, it is the duty and province of the court to say what the law is based on the canons of construction, assessment of the legislative history, and their best guess at how it should apply. But it's not for the agency to decide. And they further revealed the extent to which the agencies are self-interested, not objective, and that it is the province of the courts, because they're insulated from this. They are to be independent adjudicators. And they cited to the Federalist Papers and the founding principles in support of this. The logical development of this, Loper Bright, is the end of the delegation doctrine that has risen without an official stamp. The non-delegation doctrine ruled the law all the way up until the switch in time that saved nine, so to speak. The court packing plan era, when the court reversed its defense of individual liberty and property and suddenly ushered in the age of modern regulation. That is what is in the crosshairs, really. The court is moving against that, going back to the founding principles.
Jonathan, this speaks to the importance, of course, of your work as chief counsel for the Alliance for Natural Health. I want to give out the website and encourage our viewers to go there. That's anh-usa.org. And there's also a donate button here where you can contribute to this important organization, which is fighting these tyrannical laws. But Jonathan, I was a little bit taken aback at the idea of realizing how long this is going to take, because I thought once the Chevron doctrine fell, that there would be a cascade. I mean, perhaps I'm just naive. I don't understand how the courts work, but I thought there would be a cascade of decisions stemming from that I have not seen. It sounds like you and A&H have to sue for every inch of progress, even though the Chevron doctrine has already fallen.
That's true, and you're a part of that litigation.
That's
Thank
true.
you.
We are.
But yes, that's true. It's the sad reality that when the law changes, even fundamentally like this, it does not translate immediately into the elimination of all of the regulations that are in place that violate these principles. They have to be challenged. You have to take them to court over it. And so that's what we're doing. And we're doing it in the health context because there's no greater need for freedom than freedom of choice in the area of healthcare, as we were talking about at the start of the program. So this is why these undertakings are critical. And your appreciation of that has been very important to us. We're maintaining a suit where you are you are the first named plaintiff in the suit. We're challenging FDA censorship of 114 nutrient disease claims that the government itself communicates on its own websites, but won't allow into the marketplace, won't allow at the point of sale in the grocery stores, and won't allow online. It's absolutely preposterous, outrageous, that the government's censoring the same health information it is communicating, saying that only the government can communicate it. You can't actually have it communicated by private parties that sell the very products that are responsible for the benefits.
Right. But and we are involved in this lawsuit, and if we prevail, then tell our audience what that would mean. If we prevail for these specific claims, what would that mean?
It'll be huge. What it will mean is that every time the government puts out information from all of these federally funded health institutions on the federal level, that information can't just be locked up by the government and communicated under politically sanitized conditions to select audiences, but has to be available to the American people so that you can use it at the point of sale, so that you can find out which products in the market actually convey those benefits. And here's the other thing, no science, as you and I know, no science is true to an absolute degree. The government's argument in all these cases is, well, even though CDC said it, even though HHS said it, even though the National Complementary and Alternative Medicine Institution published it, that information is not conclusively true. And the only institution on earth that can actually determine whether science is sufficiently proven to justify allowing the public to receive the information is the FDA. We are the biggest nanny state enterprise. We determine whether something's true or not. If a sister agency, health agency thinks it's true, it's not true unless we say it's true. And this is the nonsense that they use. Here you've got governments spending hundreds of millions of your tax dollars every year researching and publishing information about nutrients that affect disease, publishing those studies, and even putting statements on their own websites about nutrient disease discoveries that these government scientists have made. And they're saying that information cannot reach the public at the point of sale. And they're saying because if you did get the information, you might misconstrue it, or you might use the information in a way that will result in your harm. In other words, we don't trust the American people to have a brain. We don't trust the American people to decide for themselves. We don't trust the American people with information.
But
We
also,
want to be the censors, and we're going to tell you what to believe.
Jonathan, this is highly relevant also because a recent Supreme Court decision involving the labeling of glyphosate, my understanding is, of course, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that the court ruled that because a federal agency had said that the product is safe when used as directed, therefore the company cannot be held liable for lack of warning on the label. So in that case, the Supreme Court is saying, well, we can trust one government agency. But what you're saying is that the FDA is saying we can't trust any agencies other than ourselves. Is that, am I saying that correctly?
Yeah. And you know how ridiculous that is, particularly because, as you know, Mike, very well, because you're a scientist, you know that science is evolutionary. It's a debate all the time. And so in science, things are more probable than not. And what is accepted today as a truism will probably within the next 5 years be debunked, and there'll be a new theory in its place. That's the way science works. But we live here and now, and we have to make decisions based on the best information. And if we're denied the best information on new things, then we can't make sound choices. And particularly when you consider almost everything is not proven to a conclusive degree. In fact, virtually nothing is proven to a conclusive degree. We have to make our own decisions based on probabilities. Well, I would rather take the risk that antioxidant vitamins reduce the risk of cancer. I would rather take the risk that omega-3 fatty acids reduce the risk of coronary heart disease. I would rather take the risk that various substances like I'm trying to think here on diabetes, on type 2 diabetes. So you've got I can't even remember.
Well, chromium, trace element chromium.
Oh, yeah, there you go. Thank you. Chromium. The chromium can help reduce the risk of type 2 diabetes. I would like to take that risk based on the fact there have been numerous studies which show a substantial reduction in these risks. I would like to take the assumption or risk that folic acid will reduce the risk of neural tube defect bursts, because there are numerous studies which support that conclusion. And you know what? When we win these things, like when I've won in court over and over again against FDA censorship of these types of claims, and the information gets into the public, where studies are done of the population and the information is saturating, there is a change in consumption habits, and it actually results in a reduction in those disease states. That's not always true, but I mean, in the case of folic acid, FDA for 10 years censored the claim that folic acid could reduce the risk of neural tube defect bursts. And we sued because we could show that 800 micrograms of folic acid could reduce the risk of a neural tube defect birth by 80% if taken by women of childbearing age before they became pregnant. Well, when we won that and the information got into the market, CDC's own studies showed a precipitous drop in the instances of neural tube defect births, so much so that the March of Dimes virtually disappeared. And you've got people, and we're talking about, there were 2,500 preventable neural tube defect births every year. FDA censored that information. And now they're in the hundreds because women know to take folic acid before they become pregnant. Now, that's a huge, huge, huge victory. Now, look, what's the downside of getting it wrong when you're talking about elements in food? Very small, because they're elements in food. They're not going to kill you. What's the downside of getting a drug wrong? Huge, because drugs are synthetic substances and they can oftentimes kill you. I mean, we got like 110,000 people dying every year from properly prescribed drugs. 110,000 people. There's more people than died in the Vietnam War. It's almost double the number of people who died in the entire long Vietnam War. Americans, that is.
Yeah. Right. Todd,
go
ahead.
What's the over-under on FDA approving breathing supports oxygen levels? I mean, it just kind of gets ridiculous. And actually, I do have one thing that because you were talking about the cherries that I wrote down just to be kind of silly to drive the point home, but if a cherry reduces disease risk in a forest and no regulator hears it, is it still illegal?
No.
Okay.
That's the only instance where it's free.
Yeah.
Likewise, if a cherry appears on the moon and an astronaut happens to find it and he eats it and benefits from elimination of his gout, it's all fine.
It's all fine. Well, one thing that we learned the last time you were on was about the Arizona statement. Maybe we could kind of leave folks with a little breadcrumb regarding that, which the Arizona statement, as I understand it, it sounds like what happens when common sense finally hires a lawyer. What part of the Arizona statement would most terrify the entrenched sick care economy?
Yeah, so the Arizona statement, I mean, if you look up online and search engine the Arizona statement, you might find it too, ANH, the Arizona statement. But it's remarkable in a number of respects, but you're asking what single most important thing do I think is conveyed by it? And that's a toughie because there are many, many important changes that it contemplates, and it's based on tremendous principles. But I think one of the most profound changes is to eliminate censorship and to eliminate anti-competitive regulation in the health space. So in other words, those two things I think would be most significant in ending chronic disease. Why? Because if you give people information on how to protect themselves from disease and how to expand their lives, their healthy living, and also for their kids, and that becomes a commonplace with people, that the information is available, they will change their habits. We know that from survey after survey. When the information is available to enhance health, people will choose those alternatives. When they choose those alternatives, that extends their lifespan. It reduces the incidence of disease. Likewise, when we break down medical monopolies and we allow all sorts of practitioners to be available to treat you, and empower you with the power to decide where to get care, it not only cuts down the cost because it increases competition, but it also increases patient-centric care, which means that rather than treating you like in a one-size-fits-all approach, which is the current approach by and large, because we have a system that reimburses physicians based on not satisfaction of the patient, but satisfaction of the insurance provider. When you have a patient-centric system where I have to actually work to improve your health in order for me to benefit from your loyalty, patronage, and continuing to see me as a physician, I will use all sorts of things to do that. And if the regulatory constraints are removed, all sorts of practitioners can start providing care who are artificially licensed out of the area of care. I mean, there are many, many practitioners. There are nurse practitioners, there are physician assistants, there are chiropractors, there are alternative medicine providers, there are naturopaths, et cetera, who have specialty in specific areas and histories of treating people with success, many times greater success than their colleagues. But they can't communicate that information because they're going to be claimed to be engaged in a practice that's regulated and then be subject to sanction by the medical boards, or they're going to run afoul of federal laws and regulations. So breaking down the anti-competitive regulations means greater patient-centric care, greater alternatives, which also enhances longevity and diminishes the significance of chronic disease. I mean, the numbers are staggering. Could consider that over the age of 65, almost everyone has at least one chronic disease in America.
Yeah.
There are very few people. I mean, it's amazing.
And it's extraordinary. And I think I'll put an end cap on this by saying that we cannot be prosperous as a nation if our population is diseased and stuck in this cycle of profiteering off of disease by the federal government engaging in censorship of the solutions that could alleviate the problem to begin with. I mean, this doesn't work for a nation.
It's a downward spiral. It really is. It's like you're pointing out, Mike. I mean, you can't have national security if the people who are going to defend you are sick. If the people who are going to defend you are not capable of even doing basic training. You can't have a nation that is prospering if the workforce can't work effectively and at full capacity for a full workday. You can't have achieve great things and maintain a society if everybody's croaking in their 60s and 70s and 80s because they have chronic diseases. You can't. It's a downward spiral that ruins the prosperity and success of our magnificent country. And so it really is necessary to overcome this in order for us to achieve the heights that we can achieve and have a society that's even greater in spades than it is now.
Absolutely. All right. Todd, you have a final question for us today before we wrap this up?
Well, just if Health Freedom had a mascot, I think it would be Jonathan holding a flamethrower.
Well, that's a new one. Jonathan's nickname is the FDA Dragon Slayer.
There you go.
But flamethrower works too.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. No, we love your activism.
We could just, the slogan would be torch the tyranny,
Yes.
Ooh, I like it.
Yeah. All right. Well, Jonathan.
Or slay it or torch it.
Slay it. Yeah.
Whatever works. We want to get rid of it.
Absolutely. Well, Jonathan, first of all, I'm very thrilled to know you over all these years and to be associated with your work at the Alliance for Natural Health. And you will continue to receive our support in these legal cases. Just want you to know that. And let me give out the website again, anh-usa.org. And folks, you can either donate directly to the Alliance for Natural Health, or frankly, if you shop with us at healthrangerstore.com, you're also supporting this effort to fight for your health freedom as well, indirectly, because we financially support these legal efforts as well. So thank you so much, Jonathan. It's always a pleasure to have you on. We look forward to it again.
All right. Talk to you later.
Thank you, Jonathan.
All right. Take care. Have a great day. All right. Well, then, Todd, we'll be back right after this break with the after party discussion here on Decentralized.tv. Stay with us.
Perfect.
Stock up on the long-term storable Ranger Bucket Set. 536 servings of clean organic superfoods for your survival pantry. Certified organic and lab-tested for purity. Order now at healthrangerstore.com.
All right, folks, welcome back. This is the after party. Mike and Todd here. And Todd, every time I have Jonathan Emord on, I feel like I need a law library behind me.
I know.
So I can reference the right court cases. He's got them all in his head.
It's amazing. It's amazing. I mean, when he talks, it just makes you think about different things. Like if sunshine actually, Mike, was discovered today, would it be prescription only? I mean,
right.
This FDA, what's up with that, Mike? I mean, look, the
FDA from its very founding is really what's sometimes called Rockefeller medicine. They sought to create a monopoly and to, stomp out any kind of competing natural medicine, botanical medicine, indigenous medicine, to actually eliminate the memory of human beings, the entire memory of indigenous medicine, which has been partially achieved, by the way. Wow.
Like if food is medicine, think it through, Mike. Does that make the grocery store an unlicensed pharmacy?
Right. Well,
right. I mean, but according to the FDA.
But that it's only if the grocery store says that they're selling cherries that treat gout.
Good point.
Then the FDA would say that you, as a grocery store, you are now selling unapproved illegal drugs.
Yes. That's just crazy.
It's crazy. Well, it's like bottled water. Okay, so here I have a bottle of water. If I were to sell bottled water, and if I said it treats a medical condition known as dehydration,
right,
then the FDA would say, well, this is now an illegal drug, and I could be arrested and imprisoned for being a drug dealer in America.
And that's not stretching it so far.
That's not.
Mike.
That's exactly how they operate.
Good.
I mean, think about it. Vitamin C reverses scurvy. Vitamin D reverses rickets. We know this. It's indisputable in the science. But if you sell vitamin D and you say prevents rickets, you go to jail.
In trouble. Yeah.
Right.
Jeez.
So it's a 100-year plus tyranny that has to end.
Yeah, I think so.
And
I
yet-
hope so.
Yeah. And if anybody is going to lead that charge, it's Jonathan Emord.
Yeah. You know, I know that you are a huge fan of BPC 157, Mike. And I was wanting to ask him about peptides because I think peptides are where gym bros, biohackers, compounding pharmacists, and federal regulators all meet in a very, very awkward sauna. And I wanted to ask him if peptides like BPC 157 are the next frontier of medical freedom, or is it just going to be the next place for regulators to use chaos to justify control? What do you think?
Well, there's already an effort underway to try to control those peptides. In fact, this is coming from HHS right now to, quote, legalize them for compounding pharmacies, but to thereby regulate them. So to limit their distribution to the compounding pharmacies. Whereas right now, if I go out and buy BPC 157, it's only sold as an experimental research substance. It's not labeled as even a nutritional supplement.
Right. So if that went through, then that would kneecap all the people currently providing BPC 157 now. They wouldn't be able
It's
to sell
not
it?
clear yet how, but it could. It could. If the federal government decided to ban a substance, they could get away with it. Like, for example, they banned a Chinese herb named ephedra.
Okay.
That was banned years ago. In Chinese medicine, it's called ma huang, and it is the herb, and it's the molecule that makes these Chinese formulas extremely effective at halting plagues and pandemics.
Okay.
And it goes back for thousands of years. Well,
Right.
Ephedra is also the molecule that was used in cold medicines in the United States. And the cold medicines were, years ago, they were purchased by like Breaking Bad people to make meth. So methamphetamines used they would isolate, and then concentrate some of these molecules in a very unsafe way.
I see.
And so at least I think I have the history of this correct, but the ma huang in particular, or ephedra, was also sold as a weight loss drug, effectively by some unscrupulous providers that would give people crazy high doses of this, which would elevate their heart rate. And some people died, like 6 or 7 people died from this. Wow. So the FDA used that to say, well, all ephedra is unsafe. Therefore, we're going to outlaw this molecule completely from America. And they did. And so Chinese medicine, which used it safely because it's in concert with all these other herbs working synergistically, never killed anybody, but that's also banned. So
amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
That's where we are today.
So educate people about BPC 157, Mike, because I know you're a huge fan and you've used it and you provide it. And
well, no, I mean, my company doesn't sell it. I link to, we are an affiliate of an organization called Limitless, but yeah, I'll bring that up. rangerdeals.com. If you go there, there is a Ranger 15% discount code here. So if you go to rangerdeals.com and you click on Limitless Peptides here, that takes you to the company. You got to be 21 or older. Yes. And then here's where you get these peptides. Now they have a copper peptide that I think is really fantastic. And they have a research blend here, which is an oral supplement that contains BPC 157 and some other things. And then they have an intranasal formulation. Now, I don't get into the injectable peptides because I'm not a gym monkey or whatever, because a lot of people do that. I mean, like weightlifters or whatever, but there are also other injectables for other purposes, but that's not my thing. I focus on the natural substances like BPC 157 or copper, which is a natural element, and the therapeutic effects of those that are either available orally or intranasally. It's just a nasal spray. And some of those are nootropics, such as Atamax or C-Max, that have really strong benefits for cognition. So you can check those out, folks, and just use discount code RANGER if you want to check those out. But I'm glad you brought that up, Todd, because that is kind of the frontier of health freedom right now. And probably the FDA will try to find some additional ways to banish your access to these substances.
Right, right. And I always like hearing it. Tell the story. So when you first started it and how it impacted you physically to be able to, go from.
Well, yeah, so it's been 16 or 17 months now that I've been able to jog. Because I had a lot of scar tissue from old martial arts injuries in my back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And for several years, I wasn't able to jog because of that. And it was very frustrating because I love working out,
Yeah.
But I started BPC 157. It was in March of 2025. And within, I think it was 6 weeks, I was jogging. And we talked about it on the show.
I remember.
Right? Yeah. And then within a couple of months, I was jogging an hour.
Yeah.
And that's now what I do. I jog an hour and then I work out with kettlebells, and my strength has gone up. My endurance has gone up. Training's gone up. I'm doing it outside in the sun, enjoying it. So BPC 157 really changed my life.
And you use the nasal, right? Where
Yeah.
you just squirt it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But it increases the circulation to scar tissue. So it helps your body activate its own natural healing process.
Awesome.
Yeah. And there are other things that can help, like red light therapy.
Yep.
Or in my case, sunlight therapy. I just go out and get the sun on it. I always jog when the sun is at more of an angle. I don't jog with the sun straight overhead.
Okay.
Because I want like a 4 p.m. or something. I want the sunlight to hit at an angle so that my body's getting it,
Ah, I gotcha.
Right. And since I have a giant loop, I'm jogging effectively in a circle. So every part of my body is getting sunlight on it at a different part of the loop.
Now, do the goats run with you or?
No, it's what my dogs do, but the goats do not.
Wow.
Goats are not joggers. It turns out they're not into that, but the dogs love it.
Yeah. The goats are they have one speed and it's called destructive, right?
They're funny, man. Goats are really funny animals to have. And, they have, one of them is really curious and always wants to come into my house.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Huh.
And he's always, he's got horns and he's always like looking through the front door, which is a glass door. and sometimes like I'm making a smoothie and I look over and in my mind, I hear the music like dun, 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 dun. And here's a goat, like a demonic goat horn, like staring through the glass, like I want in, It's so funny because it's this like haunting image, but it's just an innocent little goat kid.
Now, do you also have a donkey?
I have many donkeys.
Oh, yeah, many donkeys.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I had, my daughter sent me something to where she was like, oh, isn't this cute? And I looked at it and it was about all of these donkeys and about how they get so attached to their, the caregivers, right? How they just, do you find that? I mean, that they all have crazy personalities. Not crazy.
Well,
I'm just saying.
They do. So I have one donkey I have whose name is Hosanna, a biblical donkey name.
Yeah.
That when I go up to start to scratch her rump, because donkeys love you to scratch their rumps.
Okay.
When I go up to scratch her rump, she leans in. She wants more scratching. The thing is, she's like 800 pounds.
Wow.
So she's like leaning and pushing me around in a circle as I'm scratching her rump. And what she really likes, this is pretty funny, is, let me show you. If you take your keys, okay, I don't know if you ever heard of this, like in a self-defense class.
Yep.
If you take your keys and you put your keys like this, okay,
right,
then it's like a punching weapon. Well, turns out it's also a really nice donkey scratching tool. So if you take this and you just scratch the donkeys with it, that's when they love it. The keys get through their thick hide. They love it. So this is, I call it, these are the keys to donkey happiness.
That's great. What do you have donkeys for?
Well, there were fires in Texas in 2011, and there were these two donkeys that needed needed a new home because their home had burned down.
I see.
And so we rescued them. We agreed to take them on because we had the space. And otherwise they were going to be butchered, you know?
I gotcha.
So we saved the donkeys, and then we were told by the owners that those donkeys were fixed and that they could not have babies, and that was not true. So that's how we ended up with more donkeys.
I see. Are they fixed now?
Yes, they are.
Okay.
You better believe it, because otherwise that never ends.
Wow. So how many donkeys total?
7.
Yeah, how many donkeys
We have
total?
7 donkeys.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, we have seven donkeys. And anyway, I mean, we're just trying to rescue donkeys and you know, have some compassion for animals. And so now it's kind of like a donkey sanctuary.
Democrat
sanctuary. Yeah. Yeah. They complain like Democrats too sometimes. Yeah. They're just whining a lot, you know, like, give me more, give me more.
Oh, what a crazy dude.
Anyway, that's, you know, that's my life. Let's talk about your life and what you have going on, because, you know, not only have you built your food forest, and you have, you know, you live in Florida, you've been in crypto in the past, you still are, I believe, and you found ways to protect your assets. And so you're kind of living a life that's much better than what most people are aware is even possible. How did that happen? Tell us about the solution. I'll bring it up.
Well, 8 years ago, I had a guy who I highly respect. He came to me and he's like, Todd, my wife and I, we've been using this entity. You know, it's called a unincorporated nonprofit association for the last 5 years, and we've his words, we just saved a shit ton of money from a tax liability standpoint. And I didn't understand it. I did no research on it. I just respected him, and I respect his wife even more. She's very, very smart. Now, he was a W-2 guy, and I was a W-2 guy at that point in time, and his wife was 1099 independent contractor, as was mine. And so he introduced me to the UNA, which is to Dennis, who, if people go to my575e.com, you can actually hit Let's Go, and you can access a free interview where I interviewed Dennis, the guy that's been doing this for 40 years. It's an hour-and-a-half interview, and it has a supporting downloadable PDF guide that has 32 positive attributes to operating your own UNA. He introduced me to Dennis, and I didn't even, Dennis wanted to go through this PowerPoint presentation. I'm like, I don't need it. How do I get one? And so I just got one. I dove into the shallow end head first and operated it as my friend said to. And over the next few years, it was as advertised. And then, of course, Mike, when you and I started the show, I approached you and I'm like, Mike, I really want to talk about this UNA, because I can't imagine helping people decentralize their lives in any more meaningful way than helping them keep more of what they earn, protect what they have, and decrease their personal liability. And then you do what Mike Adams does, and you became a subject matter expert, and you did, I think it was 6 weeks of due diligence.
Well, I hired an attorney in California
yes, you did.
to look into it and to confirm that it was in law, which it is. It turns out that's confirmed.
Yes, it's confirmed.
And then when someone sets one up, it's actually signed off on by the Secretary of State of California.
That's right.
So
and affirmed by the Internal Revenue Service.
That's right. Yeah, the IRS gives you a tax ID,
number
that is exempt from filing.
But the thing with this entity is this allows you to be in the private lawfully.
Right.
And all I can tell you is the fact is that this has been around for 3/4 of a century. They were created by California legislators for California legislators. And I remember, I think your attorney said, I don't know, Mike, maybe one day they'll legislate these out of existence. And I remember when I shared that with Dennis, he laughed and he said, Todd, if Mike only knew how many California legislators I've helped acquire their own UNAs, it would answer that question for him. And what people don't realize is like, all of the banks are unincorporated associations. The FDIC is an unincorporated association.
Yeah,
when
true.
Nelson Rockefeller coins the phrase "own nothing, control everything," what do you think he's talking about?
No, they created these vehicles for themselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
The legislators.
And this just happens to be accessible to normal people because, from a return on investment standpoint, the UNAs can pay for themselves depending upon your operating reality in either 10 seconds or 2 months or half a year or whatever. But
right.
Almost in all cases, if you're generating income, you can fog a mirror, you're going to benefit from one of these. So,
but let me point out that there's always a mad rush at the end of the year.
Oh my God!
Because of the fiscal year and all that.
Yep.
And I would just really strongly advise people beat that rush. Here it is, summer of 2026. If you have any interest at all, check this out now. See if it can help you. Don't wait till December, please.
Right? Yeah, don't wait till December. Well, first of all, this year I'm going to be smarter. I'm going to basically put up a stop sign mid-November because it's so nuts.
Yeah, because you had no free time from Thanksgiving to Christmas.
No free time, and people just were kind of insane with the timelines, right? And then I felt guilty, just in case if we didn't make it to the end of the year. So I'll be smarter this year. But what I really recommend for people to do is I make it very easy for you to learn about them in the website, but then if you want to have a private one-on-one consultation with me, just book it through my575e.com. And if you move forward with the UNA, you just deduct the the consultation fee off of it. And this, I guess my favorite thing about this, Mike, is I've helped now over 700 people acquire these, and we have the private Telegram group of almost 600 people in there now.
Wow.
And if it was not as advertised, I think Mike Adams would have one or two people back channel and say, Todd's not very supportive. On the contrary, it's like people are crazy.
People are raving about it, actually.
Yeah. So we invite you.
Well, and look, folks, don't take this as financial advice. We're not, I'm not your tax attorney, etc. But you owe it to yourself to research this and find out if it can work for you and how it works and why. Why did lawmakers in California set this up and why are they using it themselves? I wonder. I wonder, and why, and that's why you haven't heard about it, because they don't want to advertise that this exists. On purpose.
Just like they don't teach nutrition in med school, they don't teach UNAs in law school or accounting.
Right. They, absolutely, and I'm pretty sure every accountant in America actually works for the IRS, not the client that's paying them any money. They're just IRS compliance officers that are working on your books.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's wild. All right. Anyway.
Well, thank you for allowing me to talk about that, Mike.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's part of the mix. For living in a decentralized manner. And I just want to say one other thing here too, which is that, we had Zach Voorhees on for the Zach Adams effect, and he is warning, and he's correct, that China is about to start banning the exporting of its high-end AI models.
Mm-hmm.
What this means is that folks, we talk about self-custody when it comes to crypto or gold and silver. You're going to have self-custody of your AI models, because they're going to start getting banned. So make sure that if you want to use AI, like popular Quen models, Quen 3.6, 27B, or 9B, or a bunch of others, download them now, from Hugging Face typically. Download them now, get your own AI hardware so that it can't be taken away from you. Now, you can use our AI engine for free at brightanswers.ai. But who knows? The government might announce some new restriction. They could outlaw some of the underlying models that we rely on as well. Yeah. They could force it offline. So just get your own AI models, run them locally, uncensored if you can, and that way you have self-custody of machine cognition.
Mike, I think it would be very helpful if at some point in time, you might be able to put together some kind of a just a simple training on how people might be able to do that, how they might take self-custody of their AI. Just because,
Yeah.
you know, not all of us are are Mike Adams, you know, and so
Okay, good point.
yeah,
Okay.
I mean,
It's very
personally,
straightforward. Well,
yeah,
let me just bring up the website. Actually, let's just do
Sure.
that right now. Here. If I
Okay,
go
great.
to huggingface.co. Okay, here it is. Huggingface.co. The AI community building the future. All right. So let's say I want to search for a model. Let's search for Quinn 3.6 9B uncensored. How about that?
okay,
All right. Here it is. Quinn 3.6 9B heretic. That's good. Heretic is that's a group that uncensors models. Uncensored thinking sweet madness. That sounds perfect. Okay. So then this is a GGUF, which means it's a single downloadable file. So I go here and I click on files right here.
Okay.
And then you will see here's a GGUF. This is this is a 16-bit GGUF. And then here is an 8-bit. I wouldn't run a full 16-bit, but you can just click on this and you can download this file.
Okay.
Or let's say I want to just do Quinn 3. No. Actually, this is even easier. What am I thinking? Go to lmstudio.com right here. And then you can this is the inference engine. You can download this for Windows. And then once you set this up, you search for models inside the software with this little search icon right here. And you just type in Quinn right there, and it will search for the models for you. And then you click on download, and it auto downloads them and installs them so that you can run them locally. So that's how that works. So yeah, LM Studio is actually a very easy gateway.
okay. And then once you have it on your computer, then you literally you could not have any internet access,
Right.
and be able to.
You can use it offline. But you have to have some local hardware that can, can run it. You're going to need a GPU probably at some level. Although a 9 billion parameter model will fit in some pretty small graphics cards. So you don't have to spend a fortune on that.
Yeah.
And some of today's laptops have pretty decent graphics cards in them.
Yeah.
So you can run it on your laptop.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Now, the above phone or the above book, those already have your LLM built into them, right?
They do, which is a 7 billion parameter model. The above phone, that's pre-installed. If you go to, once again, go to rangerdeals.com and you can click on here, above phone. It's the top right here. Here it is, above phone. It's on the top right. You click on that and you can see the above phone models, and they do come pre-installed with our original, what was called the Enoch model.
That's awesome.
Is pre-installed and it runs. It's not blazing fast, but it does run.
Yeah, it gets the job done.
Yeah. So those are some other things that you can do. Although that model is definitely obsolete compared to today's newer models, but that model is very well trained on natural medicine.
Exactly.
But if you want the best model today, that's going to be just go to brightanswers.ai and use this online. That is, we'll keep it online as long as we can. But if the government, criminalizes this kind of thing, then we won't have a choice. I'm not going to jail over, an AI model.
Right.
So we'll see where that goes.
It's crazy we're even talking about that being
I know.
a possibility. It's just that drives me nuts. Why we decentralize our lives, everyone.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, I should also mention, everybody, don't miss the other episodes of this show at decentralized.tv. And also, we recently interviewed Tucker Carlson, and the Tucker Carlson episode is live at decentralized.tv. And we had a great time with Tucker.
Oh, he was amazing.
It was like a laugh riot. We were just cracking up half the show. Loads of fun.
I enjoyed it. That was one of my favorite interviews ever.
Yeah, Tucker is a very fun person. I mean, he's got a sense of humor, Yeah,
he does. He's full of joy.
Yeah, that's a good thing. Shouldn't we all be?
We should all be.
Well, I'm
Great.
going to go get more full of joy by walking my goats.
Okay.
And laughing at their
Scratch
playfulness.
those donkeys.
and key scratching the donkey rumps. So
Perfect.
yeah, we'll have fun with that.
And I'm heading out back. You know what, Mike?
What?
Kind of a progress report here, but my back food forest was so prolific in creating banana plants this year.
Yeah.
Just going everywhere, right? and I actually took a picture of my backyard, and I have my AI guy that I talk to. Yeah, I kind of personify him, right? That it's just I have a kind of a relationship, just kind of a bruh relationship, and I'm like, tell me how I can create some bananas. And the AI came back and he says, you know, your food forest is all about making more banana plants, not bananas. But it then told me that I needed to, I needed to make it so there's only 3 in a pod. So I had to go hack and just destroy a lot of banana trees.
Oh,
you know,
because they're wasting energy on plants and not bananas.
They're growing. And my God, I have so many racks coming out now. And it's the little things, but when you start seeing these big banana racks coming out,
I love
just
bananas.
Awesome. Yeah,
and also, you know, when those open up, those banana racks, you call
flowers.
Them, you know that bumblebees love those.
Oh yeah,
they love the nectar that comes out of them, so they're great for pollinators too.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. And then you have to figure out it starts having a big old long tail. And I learned that, you know, when that happens, that just means it's not going to produce any more banana plants. So you want to hack that off under the bottom bananas. Yeah. Right. So it's not, no nutrients are going to.
I see.
Right.
But so that tail, that's what the bees like. They like that tail.
Hell, you know,
that's all right. They can have some bananas.
Yeah. I'll cut the tail off and put it on the ground and they can come do their thing.
Okay. Perfect.
They can go after some tail on the ground.
Okay. All right.
Anyway, so I'm going to go say hi to the bananas and the raccoons and the deer and just have a great weekend, Mike.
Okay. That's awesome. Well, give them all my best.
All right.
Because I have their relatives in my smoothie here. I'm talking about the bananas, not the raccoons.
Awesome.
We don't do blended raccoons. That's not
good.
No,
good.
No, we do blended bananas and superfoods, and that's it. So,
Perfect.
All right. Well, have a great weekend, Todd.
All right. Awesome. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah. Thank you all for watching. Be sure to check out all the other episodes at decentralized.tv. Until next time, take care.
Cheers.